Let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to the first of the 5-part series, Becoming a Resilient Scientist, which is offered by the NIH Office of Intramural Training and Education. I'm Dr. Sharon Milgram, and I direct the NIH OITE, and I am really pleased to welcome you to the series this year. This series started actually before the pandemic, but was much less, there was less material, there was less discussion, there was, sort of this approach of here, let's give you some material and you'll figure out how to work with it. And what we came to appreciate over the pandemic in doing this many times with many graduate students, undergrads, postbacks, postdocs, trainees at all levels, what we really came to appreciate is that this is really a community effort. It takes engagement and discussion. It takes a lot of Q&A. It takes sitting in groups and talking with peers. And that led to the development of the series. And it's really nice to see you here. We were debating how many people would show up, and Uli, who many of you have heard from, who does a lot of the back end organizing and a lot of the front end cheerleading, said that she thought we would hit 500, and we are at 495. There we go. So Uli wins this bet, and it's really nice to see so many of you here. So I want to just start by introducing this guy. This is our dog, Teo. And although I'm back in the office a lot, I'm not back every day. And I'm here today. And at some point, it is very likely that you will hear Teo. And he is a barker. And he apologizes in advance for that. Please put your questions into the Q&A box, not the chat box. We will put links to resources, to registration and such in the chat, and I will take questions out of the Q&A. This is being recorded, so if you want to watch it later, you'll use the same link. Eventually, it will be closed captioned and put up on our YouTube channel. And colleagues and friends who missed it, if you're chatting with them about it, you can tell them that they just need to go ahead and register and they can watch. This is a 5-part series. I'm going to talk one week, and the following week are small group discussions about the material. NIH is hosting small group discussions, and you can join us. But we know that many university campuses are hosting their own small group discussions. And so if you're on a campus that's doing the Resilient Scientist series together with this amazing community, then you go to groups on your campus. And you will hear me say again and again, it's the groups where the learning really happens. It's also the time in between each lecture where you play around with the material, think about it, talk about it, but it's a lot when you come back to the group to share. So I hope you will both participate in the webinars and come to the groups. So let's just start from the fact that the question isn't whether things will go wrong. Of course they will, right? The question is when and what and how often and how bad will this particular setback be, and what are the potential consequences. We work in complex, difficult fields. Science inherently is developed on the principle that a lot of things don't work, and we learn from those things that don't work. But nonetheless, nobody likes to do experiments that lead in unhelpful directions. This is a field built on learning lots of difficult material, constantly needing to learn and relearn. And in general, we are all aspiring in our careers to doing and solving big problems, doing big things and solving big problems. And that means difficulty. That means rejection. That means critique. That means not getting the paper accepted where we were hoping it got accepted. So resilience is the idea that we adapt and grow through all of those setbacks. That when we are navigating a challenging situation or an adversity, we can do it with some sense of calm. We can do it with awareness of what's happening for us and what's happening around us, and that we have the skills to navigate all of the setbacks, because we're going to face setback again and again. And what we want is to be able to see all those setbacks through a calm perspective. Resilience is actually a set of attitudes and behaviors. It's beliefs that we hold and things that we do and don't do. So it's both attitudes and behaviors. And the really key element about this is that resilience can be learned. We develop our resilience, and we do that through learning about the science of resilience, what we're going to do here in the webinars. It's through self-reflection, discussion, and practice. And that's the key to having some lecture, some guided work during the week, followed by discussions, that we are engaged in active learning together as a community. Now, one thing that's important to remember, all of you, as you navigate your career and consider where you're heading, all of you are thinking about influencing others through the types of research you do, the healthcare you do, the teaching, the advocacy, whatever career it is that really excites you. But you're thinking about things that involve influencing others. So resilience is also something that we can model for others. And we like to say within a research group, resilience starts at the top. But the honest truth is resilience also spreads throughout the group. So as peer mentors and emerging leaders, beyond addressing your own resilience, you want to develop the skill and ability to model resilience for others, to talk about resilience with others. We are much stronger as a community if we have the language and the shared experience of addressing resilience and well-being. So that's a lot of words. Sometimes I'm going to talk in models instead. Some of you will love the words, some of you will love the model. Here's a really nice model for thinking about resilience, particularly in educational environments. When we start a new class or a new internship, or we're a first-year graduate student, we're beginning our first clerkship working with patients, we begin from this place of enthusiasm. And we are an enthusiastic beginner, is what Ken Blanchard calls us. We may not be very good at what we're doing, but we have this sense of excitement and confidence. We're going to be able to learn this material. We're going to be able to learn how to mentor an undergraduate. We're going to get this paper submitted and accepted. Eventually, and sometimes really quickly for some of us, eventually we hit this place where we become somewhat disillusioned. Maybe we realize this material is much harder than we think. Maybe our new advisor or preceptor or PI, if we're working in a research group, maybe they give us really critical input and they don't really spend a lot of time getting to know us at the beginning. And we realize, oh, wait a minute, you know, this relationship, I'm going to learn things, but it could also be difficult. Maybe we get a grade that's really disheartening. Maybe we get a rejection or two. We hit this stage where our confidence has really been hit. Maybe our competence is actually higher, but we've come to realize, oh, this is really hard. Resilience is essentially what happens when you hit the disillusioned learner stage. When your confidence drops, but you need to persist because what you're doing matters to you. That's resilience. What happens then? If we hold on, if we find new ways of tackling challenges, if we move through this experience with a sense of opportunity to learn, with a sense of it's okay to seek help, then we have a good shot at getting through it and growing, and we become a cautious performer and sometimes even a high achiever. Resilience is what happens when we hit a big bump in the road, in the classroom, in applications, in relationship management, in whatever it is that we're trying to achieve for our career. Now, it's really important to understand what resilience is, but it is equally important to understand what it is not. And I want you to hear what I have to say about this and give it some thought over the next week. Resilience is not working to exhaustion because work is important, because that deadline matters to us, because our boss, a supervisor, someone else important to us says we should be. Resilience is realizing that we're working to exhaustion and doing something about it. Resilience is also not persisting no matter what. Well, I started this, so damn it, I'm going to end it. Resilience is a thoughtful approach to persisting or choosing not to persist or choosing to persist in a different way. So it isn't just going on no matter what. It's moving forward intentionally. And then one last thing that resilience is not. Resilience is not being strong as people mistreat us, as they ignore our boundaries, as they treat us poorly and ignoring it. Resilience is addressing difficult interpersonal issues, deciding how, seeking support, making decisions. So it isn't about suffering in silence. It isn't about working no matter what. It's about making intentional decisions. Sometimes when I talk to students about resilience and well-being, someone rightfully raises their hand and says, you know, don't you think if PIs treated trainees better, if the scientific environment was more supportive, we wouldn't need this material, right? Wouldn't it be better to change the culture? And I think the honest truth is we desperately need to change the culture of science and healthcare and how we treat our trainees and each other. But even if we found ourselves in an environment where everyone was focused all of the time on behaving responsibly and respectfully, and I really wish we would get there, and I hope we get there, even if that was the case, we would still be facing setbacks and disappointments. We would still be dealing with differences of opinion, and we still need our resilience. So this is not about suffering in terrible environments. This is not about accepting the culture as it is. It's about learning skills to navigate difficult situations, including developing skills to help make culture change happen. And I think it's important again and again to stress that there's really two goals of this course: to help you become a more resilient scientist, and for all of us to contribute to this strong desire we have to make the biomedical research enterprise and the healthcare enterprise as supportive, as welcoming, and inclusive as possible. When we think about resilience, I'm going to give you a few take-home messages, and this is the first. Resilience is people plus process plus preparation. And I want you to keep that in mind as we look at the principles of resilience today and as we build on it throughout the 5 units. We are not resilient when we isolate ourselves. We are not resilient without learning some skills. That's the process. What behaviors drive resilience? That's the process. And we are not resilient unless we practice regularly. We can't just find our resilience in the moment when something hard happens. We have to be practicing all along, laying a foundation. And then when we really need to dig deep and find our resilience, it's there. So people, process, and preparation. We're going to go through a bunch of bullet points, and I'm going to just set the stage, and then we're going to dive much deeper into many of these bullet points over the next 5 sessions. And the first is, if we want to be resilient, we really have to have the self-awareness of how we have behaved in the past and what behaviors are helpful and what behaviors are unhelpful. So we have to learn from previous experiences, both positive ones, where we hit the disillusioned learner phase and dug deep and held on, and we had a good outcome, and from more challenging times where we weren't as resilient as we had hoped. Now, this type of self-awareness is not helpful if it comes from this place of judgment and sort of a feeling of less than. Oh, I'm not very good at this. Oh, I didn't do very well. Oh, I wish I did better here. It doesn't come from a hard place like that. This self-awareness has to come from a very kind and compassionate lens. We have to come at this from appreciating that we all struggle in this area at times, that some of us have learned more, some of us haven't learned enough yet, some of us haven't had encouragement to practice, and the goal has to be to start where we are and grow, not to be hard on ourselves about where we are. Another point I want to make about this is that we all struggle in some aspects of relationship management, of self-management, reading social cues, being assertive. We all have our strengths in these areas, and we all have our gaps and our blind spots. And so we have to come at these experiences from that kind and compassionate place. So I think this material is hard for everyone, but it is harder for some. And I hope that we will address those kinds of issues as we move through the material. And I especially hope that in the small groups, we give space to honor that each of us is on a journey of figuring out how to be resilient and how to take care of ourselves. And we're going to support each other through that. You know, I give these lectures as if I'm an expert, and the honest truth is I too am learning. And sometimes I need a reminder to come at this from a kind and compassionate lens. So I can't stress that enough. The second thing that we need to do to be resilient is we have to build strong, positive relationships with peers and mentors. The honest truth is that we are hardwired to connect. We do much better when we reach out and seek support. The problem is when we hit a rough spot, when we make a mistake, when something doesn't work out well, when we don't do as well as we had hoped, we turn inward in this place of blame and shame. And when we feel shame, oh, I should have known that. Oh, I should have done better, right? I shouldn't have let that happen. When we feel shame, we want to hide. And when we hide, we really aren't being resilient, right? Because big part of resilience is reaching out to people and getting support. So I love to say, remember the rule of opposites. Just when you feel like you need to hide is when you need to show up at an activity. You know, the groups next week, right? You're going to get lots of emails from Uli encouraging you to go. And I know some of you have signed up already for what we call a cohort group, where you will meet with the same people every time. Some of you will probably join the drop-in groups. And what happens is we hit the day of or the day before, and people say, oh, I didn't do as much work on this. Oh, it was much harder than I thought. Oh, it'll be so embarrassing to tell people how much this part is a struggle for me, or how much that part feels hard for me. And so we don't go, right? We get to this place of embarrassment and shame, and we don't reach out. Just when we hit that place is when we need to go, even if we're a little quiet at the start, even if we choose not to share everything. So I can't stress enough the importance of building positive relationships. Some of you are first-year graduate students, first-year postbacks, first postdoc, just out of your graduate work, you know, just here at NIH at the start, you're just getting started. One of the key things that you can do at the outset is put energy into building community, attending activities, getting to know people, because resilience really starts with the people around us. Now, in the end, I'm going to give you some journaling prompts to help you think about your peer groups and your mentoring relationships. In fact, each of these bullets will come with a set of proofs. I mean, a set of journaling prompts. The third thing, to be resilient, we have to be proactive and use resources to thrive. Somehow, as we move through the world in our families and our cultures, many of us have gotten the message to figure it out ourselves, right? To be quiet and don't show what you don't know, right? If you don't know something, be quiet. Figure it out on your own. You shouldn't need help. You should know this already, so don't reach out. Unfortunately, those messages mean we often don't seek out and use resources. The thing is that we all have a lot to learn. We are all growing and learning, especially students, right? You're starting out in these big, complicated fields. If you're a postdoc, yeah, you've done this before, but now you're in a new group and maybe suddenly supervising others and mentoring others, juggling science and issues at home and job searches. I mean, we shouldn't all be able to do this on our own. In fact, it's just the opposite. It's just that culturally we've gotten this message that we should. When you tell yourself, I should know this, or I should be able to do this, or when somebody in your group says you should know this, or you should be able to do this, tell yourself that for the most part, all of those shoulds are unreasonable and really not accurate. Yes, we should have some energy towards addressing things we don't know. We should be focused on learning and growing as much as we possibly can. But we don't come in knowing things, and there is no like magic point where suddenly we have all the knowledge we need. So it's not like we hit the disillusioned learner phase once and we move through it and it's over. It's again and again and again. So we're always learning. Now, there are a lot of things that hold people back from using helpful resources. So I want you to just spend a moment right now thinking about what holds you back from using resources. All right. And just for a moment, put into the chat any words that come to mind. Not into the Q&A, please, because I'll need to use that later, but into the chat. What holds you back from using resources? What are the barriers for you? I'm going to wait just 10 more seconds with the hope that somebody gets the ball rolling. What are some of the barriers that keep you from using potentially helpful resources?
They're adding it in the Q&A instead of the chat share.
That's perfect. I can manage in the Q&A. Oh, the chat is disabled. Too busy, right? There's a lot of comments about the chat. Uncertainty about whether they'll be helpful, imposter syndrome, embarrassment, lack of knowledge about where the resources are, fear, shyness, insecurity, fear. I don't want to take up someone's time. I don't have time. Pride, fear, the desire to do it myself. I want to fit in. Feeling like I should know it already. Distrust, it will be used against me. Every one of these things that you mentioned is legit because they've happened, right? People have judged us. Sometimes we're embarrassed and people sort of double down on our embarrassment, right? We want them to say, oh, I'm so glad you reached out. And instead we get an unwelcoming comment. So it's really fair to feel that there are some barriers. The thing is that we've learned from experience not to use resources, right? And like I said, for some of us, it's even harder. I'm very introverted. I've had a really bad experience in the past. I have a lot of imposter fears because I'm the only person in my group with this identity. And so my imposter fears are huge. We all have reasons. The problem is, and here's what others have shared in the past. So as you all keep sharing yours, you can see all these other reasons that people have shared. The thing is that we know from experience, we know from the science of resilience, that when we find a supportive community, when we reach out and use resources that are given in a really helpful and positive way, then we grow and learn. So somehow we've gotten the message not to try, and we have to undo that and keep trying. We have to find communities that make it comfortable to share. And that's what I hope in part you will find in the discussion groups. I also hope that you will explore resources on your campus. I hope that you will work within the communities that you're in to find the positive places to get resources. At NIH, the OITE staff is really here to help you. Training office staff in your institutes are here to help you. Many PIs, people in the branch and where you're working want to help. There are resources out there that are given from a positive place, but we get caught in this place of either not wanting to ask or having asked in the past and not had a good outcome or not even knowing where to ask. However, if we don't tackle this, we end up with a lot less resilience. So we're going to have to work to undo all of these things that you put in here, right? You're going to have to say, well, I don't want to feel less than for needing help. So I'm going to pause and I'm going to try to solve this on my own for a little bit. And then I'm going to think of the best way to go and get some input, right? So I'm working on a paper and I'm really stuck and I feel like I should work it out on my own. But the honest truth is I haven't written a lot of papers. I'm going to see what resources are out there. Maybe there's a writing center. Maybe there is something my mentor could suggest. Maybe there's a course I could take. Maybe there are videos online that help people with procrastination around writing. Maybe there's a writing group I can join. So what are my resources and should I use them? We all need to work to examine and reframe our views of reaching out for support, asking questions, and using resources. And the best way to start looking at that is to ask where the views come from. What messages have you received that make it hard to seek help? We're going to talk a lot about identity and how our identities intersect with our way of being in our research group and in education, how that influences our resilience. And sometimes the messages that we've received are based on who we are. Sometimes they're broad, generic messages. Sometimes they came from our family, but we have all received messages about whether it is strong or weak to reach out for help, whether it is strong or weak to show up and use resources. And so you want to start with what messages have I received? Where did they come from? And how have they influenced me? That, remember, the first one was we have to look at our behaviors, right? Our previous experiences. When we've used resources, when has it helped? When we've used resources, when hasn't it helped? And how could I address that? Right. And so we're going to talk again and again about using resources, and again about how who we are and the messages we received influence that. And I see already in the chat some comments about stereotype threat makes that hard for me, right? I see people who have commented in the chat about being neurodiverse makes it harder for me. Being the only woman in a male-dominated field makes it hard for me. In all cases, we've received messages, and we want to look at those. And we're going to talk a lot about various resources as we move through. And I saw some questions about give us some examples of what you mean by resources. There's a journal prompt at the end to help with that, and we'll talk a lot about resources in the groups. So there's a whole lot that holds us back from using resources. And I think one of the best things to do for us right now is to park that idea, go through the rest of it, and then maybe let's try to come back at the end and as a community reframe that using resources is a sign of strength, that getting the help and support you need to be successful in what matters to you actually is a strong, resilient behavior, not a lazy behavior, not a negative behavior, but one to be celebrated. And that's why doing this in community matters so much. Now, the next two bullets I'm going to address together. If we want to be resilient, we need to be very mindful of how we approach setback and how we engage with our distorted self-talk. When we face setback, we tell stories. We have to start becoming very aware of those stories. That goes together with the next bullet, developing our emotional literacy. We have to understand how much our emotions drive behavior and impact responses. So I'm going to look at those two together through this really helpful model. So the key thing is that what we think affects how we feel and act. How we feel affects what we think and do. And what we do affects how we think and feel. All three of these are inextricably linked. When we change one, it will impact the other two. So if we hit a setback and we think, I really need some guidance and input and support, but we tell ourselves a story, oh no, if we reach out, we will look fill in the blank, lazy, stupid, incompetent, like I don't belong here. Those negative thoughts drive really difficult emotions of not belonging, of disappointment, of being disheartened. Those negative thoughts and those difficult emotions drive unhelpful behaviors, like we hide, like we don't answer emails, like when somebody says, is everything okay? We say, oh, yes, sure. So one influences the other, influences the other. They are inextricably linked. Now, a really helpful thing in this is if we gain input, an entree anywhere here, if we make small changes in our behavior, it could help us improve our thoughts and emotions. If we become more emotionally aware and better able to tolerate uncomfortable emotions, it might help us move forward with helpful behaviors. Any place where we start to learn positive, helpful strategies gives us a chance of influencing the rest of them. And so that's why I say it's not just a helpful model, there's a question. Is this helpful for me or unhelpful? Are these thoughts right now helpful or unhelpful? Is the behavior right now that I'm doing helpful or unhelpful? And the thing is, there's not a list of these are unhelpful and these are helpful. It's very context specific. It matters in the moment, right? Sometimes, avoiding a confrontation is really helpful. I need time to cool off. I need to get advice. I need to think this through. This is a really critical time. I'm going to wait for a minute, right? So avoiding helpful behavior. Sometimes not helpful. This is really weighing on me. I need to talk about it with someone now. I need to address this issue. So I want to be clear. There aren't very many absolute, always helpful, always unhelpful. There's really a situational element to this model. We're going to come back to this model again and again, right? Because as we learn more about the stories we tell, as we learn more about emotional regulation, and as we look more at various behaviors that can be helpful at times, then we start to develop resilience strategies. So we can decide, is this a time to use resources, or is this a time to figure it out on my own? I need to use some resources. Who is it that will be helpful, right? It gives us a lot of control. The moment we start learning this model, we start to see ways that we can grow and learn. I have to say that when I learned this several years ago and started realizing how much my stories were driving things, I was sort of blown away. I couldn't wait to talk about it with others. And then I realized I wasn't alone. Everyone's stories were driving behaviors, right? Everyone was struggling with the same thing. I think the most important thing in this course is none of us are alone with all of this, that we find a helpful community. So we're going to start with behaviors just a little bit today. Really, in general, as we go through the course, we're going to hit behaviors from 3 angles. The ways we do and don't take care of ourselves. We're going to talk a lot about setting boundaries and addressing issues. A big part of resilience is knowing what is important to us and going after it, and knowing how we want to do that by setting healthy boundaries. Another big part is being assertive and addressing issues. So we're going to cover all 3 of those. Today, we'll do the top one. And if you think about it, it's with 3 in sort of 3 directions. First of all, for ourselves, how am I going to take care of myself? How do I set boundaries for myself? How do I address issues? There's also how we support others in doing this, right? So how am I going to promote the well-being of the other students in my program, right? I can't be primarily responsible for others, but how can I encourage them? How can I promote the well-being of students that I mentor? Many of you probably just finished mentoring summer interns. Some of you may be mentoring now. So how do I support healthy behaviors in others? And then one other way, we tend to see behaviors of others, and we don't always know their thoughts or the emotions underneath those behaviors, but we interpret those behaviors. So I just want to put a pin on that. We won't talk about it a lot, but the honest truth is we are constantly living this triangle, right? Our thoughts and our emotions are driving our behaviors. Somebody is watching our behaviors and they are filling in a story for themselves, right? And they see our behaviors and it causes emotional responses in them. So we're sort of living this triangle often, which is why the ability to be assertive, speak up and talk about what's going on is so important. So we're going to talk a lot about behaviors later. Now let's spend a moment on thoughts. And we're just going to do it from this angle. And then next week, not next week, in 2 weeks, the next unit, all we're going to do is talk about stories. We are all storytellers. Things happen to us. The activating event. Somebody says something, that's really challenges our view of our thesis project. We get a grade that's disappointing. We have an experiment that goes terribly poorly. We apply for jobs and we don't hear anything, and we're getting more and more worried. Activating event, whatever it is that happens. That activating event drives beliefs in the story we tell ourselves about what happened, and that drives consequences. The honest truth is sometimes the activating event drives consequences, right? We don't get a grant and it influences the next 6 months because we have to reapply. Or we didn't get the grades that we needed on a standardized test, those postbacks out there applying to medical school, right? I mean, let's be honest, MCATs are a big part of the process. Activating event, disappointing score maybe. Sometimes the activating event itself has consequences. I have to do it again. I have to reapply. I'm going to have to find a new group. I'm going to have to fill in the blank. But often the beliefs add even more consequences. We don't have control over something that already happened. And often the consequence, at least the part that comes direct, we have no control over, but we have a lot of control over the beliefs. And that's where the thoughts part comes, that we can tell ourselves stories that are realistic. We can tell ourselves stories that are unrealistic, helpful, unhelpful, kind, unkind. And we are going to spend a lot of time talking about the stories we tell. Generally, we tend to tell pretty distorted stories. Many of us are very hard on ourselves, and we come at our stories about ourselves through a very negative lens. And we're going to talk a lot about that next time. Okay, so that's the thoughts part. We will be spending a lot of time on that the next time, and then building on it in all of the other units. So we've introduced behaviors and we've introduced thoughts. Let's introduce emotions. So how we feel affects what we think and do. And I like this model a lot. So, generally every day we go about our life and we experience some hassles, and we experience what I call an uplift, a short interaction or long interaction that brings us some joy that we feel really positive about. Yesterday, I oriented a set of postbacks who many of them are here from the OITE PEP program. That was like a daily uplift. I smiled all day, but I also had some daily, some hassles. We move through life, hassles and uplifts. They drive emotions. Emotions are automatic. It's just a piece of data. In this moment, I feel joy. I feel satisfied. I feel angry. I feel scared. I feel disconnected. I feel disrespected, right? It just drives automatic emotions. Emotions aren't good or bad. They're data, but they can be very uncomfortable for us. Some are comfortable, some are uncomfortable. Those emotions drive our attitudes and behaviors, especially when we are not aware of them. So the thing is, when we're not aware of our emotions, we sometimes make decisions that are very emotion driven. What we want, resilience, is the ability to pause, factor in how we feel, factor in how we think, ask ourselves if our thinking is accurate and helpful in the moment. Do we need to reframe? Do we need to reconsider? Do we need to get advice? Do we need to use support? Now I make a decision. But what happens is we aren't so aware of our emotions, and they get the better of us. And that drives a lot of behavior that isn't very resilient, that isn't very helpful, right? If you think about it, right? We can engage or withdraw. We can persist. We can give up. We can feel really connected and supported, or disconnected and unsupported. And a big element of that is driven by sort of the balance of the hassles and uplifts that we have in a day and how they drive our emotions. Now, the other thing is we can work this backwards. So let's say you realized that you were for a long time really connected and feeling very energized, really good, right? An enthusiastic beginner and a cautious performer, and things are going okay. But you realize suddenly that you're feeling really disconnected and pretty unsatisfied and really like irritable, right? You've sort of withdrawn, you've given up. The power of this model is we can start here and say, whoa, here's what's happening for me right now. So what's going on? What am I feeling that's driving this disconnect? Fear about this, a lack of support about that, sadness over this, right? We tap into it. The honest truth is we have all been going through such a traumatic and difficult time. I think we all have so much grief and sadness, right? And it drives all of these different attitudes and behaviors. As we work this backward, we can say, okay, so here's where I'm at. What's causing those things and what can I do about it? So emotional agility or emotional regulation gives us the ability to pause, work with our emotions, work with the thoughts, and put them together in helpful decision making. So you should think of it this way. We want to become aware of our emotions. We want to learn how to interpret them accurately. And then we want to be able to regulate. By that, I mean, right, maybe we decide we are too emotional in the moment to respond. Maybe we decide, even though we're afraid, we want to have this discussion, even though it's embarrassing to go and show up at that group and talk about our struggles. We're going to go because it could help. So regulation means we pause and make decisions on those emotions in a more thoughtful way, because or else what happens, emotions just jump out, right? And they drive everything. So the thing is, in the model, in the long term, it's not just feelings. So note that I added thoughts here, right? So our things that happen to us drive our thoughts and our feelings that make us either comfortable or uncomfortable, sometimes a mix of both. And that drives our attitudes and behaviors. And the more we can integrate that, the more power we have to pause and look at what's happening, the more open we are to seeking input, using resources, and getting support, the more resilient we become. It doesn't mean the outcome is any better. It means our response to the outcome is calmer, more thoughtful, more together. And often over time, it does lead to good or different outcomes. So resilient learners are curious and kind to themselves in exploring their thoughts, their feelings, and their behaviors. We appreciate all three of these matter. So when I say curious, that's self-awareness, right? That's the ability to pause and say, well, what does frustration look like to me? What happens for me when I feel disconnected in my research group, right? So that's the self-awareness piece. Now, the kind piece is the idea of self-compassion. A lot of us have the idea we need to be hard on ourselves. We need to push ourselves. If we tell ourselves stories of judgment, we will work hard. But the science of resilience shows us that when we accept that we make mistakes, when we accept that we have learning and growing to do, that we do much better. There's a researcher, a self-compassion researcher, Kristen Neff, who has a lot of data showing that the more we can be compassionate about ourselves, the more resilient we can be. So really resilient learners buy into this idea of self-awareness and self-compassion, and then they explore new ways forward, right? When you see unhelpful thoughts, unhelpful or uncomfortable feelings and behaviors that are getting in the way, you work to change them. A big concept there is the idea of reframing unhelpful stories. And we're going to talk a lot next week about where unhelpful stories come from and how to put them in perspective. We're also going to talk a lot about this concept of tolerance. So the honest truth is that uncomfortable emotions are also data points, just like comfortable emotions. The problem is the minute we feel uncomfortable, right, we tend to go into a fight, flight, freeze response, really fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? So we give in. Uncomfortable emotions are hard to sit with. Tolerance is the ability to be with an uncomfortable emotion while thoughtfully deciding what to do next. I am afraid and I'm going to still talk with someone. Or I accept that this discomfort is going to grow until I talk with them, And then hopefully it will get better because I need to have this conversation. So tolerance is the ability to sit with uncomfortable emotions. So we're going to talk about three concepts: reframing and tolerance, and then this third idea of finding the learning, which we're going to talk about a lot as we move forward. So I want to give you a picture to take away to summarize this beginning part. And this comes from the work of Marshall Rosenberg and nonviolent communication, which is a way of learning to resolve conflicts, is based on the work of amazing leaders like Mahatma Gandhi and the Reverend Martin Luther King. And they say that we can talk to ourselves or others like a jackal or like a giraffe. They use these two animals to give us a entrance into this model. So look at this jackal. Like, this is not a good moment for that bird. And you could think of the jackal as tear down. On the other hand, you can talk to yourself as like a giraffe. The giraffe has really tall, sees over the tree canopy, the largest heart in the kingdom. When we're in the classroom together and I put up the picture of the giraffe, people go, "Ah." It's hard not to smile for a moment when you see a picture of giraffes. So we can be jackals and tear ourselves down. We can be giraffes and build ourselves up. Now, giraffe is not this unreasonable positive when we shouldn't be positive. It's telling a realistic story. It's looking at the situation from an open, what can I do about it lens. Okay. It's not just everything will be fine, I can ignore it. Therefore, I added a third animal, the ostrich, because I think at times it's not that we're tearing ourselves down, and we're certainly not working to build ourselves up. What we're doing is ignoring the issue. Why? Because of all the uncomfortable feelings, because of the messages, the microaggressions, because of biases, because of things that happened in the past. I said, why don't you use resources? And some of you said, I tried in the past and it didn't work very well. So sometimes there's good reasons why we behave like an ostrich, but we still need to ask ourselves if it helps. So we can be a jackal, a giraffe, or an ostrich. We're not one or the other all the time. We move between these, but take a look at this and ask yourself, do I work to build myself up? Or do I tend to tear myself down? Or when I hit the disillusioned learner phase, do I ignore? And today I am largely talking from this perspective of how we treat ourselves, but appreciate that it's also how we treat others. When we talk about assertiveness and mentor-mentee relationships, we will talk about being with an advisor and in an environment where they're building us up, right? And there's a comment in here about it's hard to build trust with a new PI, and that's true. And, you know, goes back to my comment at the beginning, right? That in the best case scenario, all mentors and teachers and role models would be focused on building up the people that they mentor and teach and train, right? So we would be walking every day mostly in a giraffe kind of world. But the honest truth is, we see lots of jackaling happen, and some of us are in environments where a lot of ignoring of issues are happening. So while today we're talking about this from an internal place of, am I a jackal to myself? Am I an ostrich to myself? Am I a giraffe to myself? And how do I cultivate that? I just want to point out that there is this idea of how we treat others. So you can think about how others treat you, but also how you treat others. We're going to spend a whole lot of time on the stories we tell and the emotions that play into those stories, and we're going to really dive into that next time. So we can be a jackal sometimes, a giraffe other times, and a lot of what drives, and an ostrich some of the time, and what drives that is our level of stress, our resilience skills, what resources and support we're using. So we'll really revisit that a lot. All right, the fifth bullet, we develop our growth mindset. Remember, I said we got to find the learning. So you can replace the words find the learning with growth mindset. This is based on the work of Carol Dweck and other researchers. Dr. Dweck wrote a great book, Mindset Matters. We have it in the OITE library. For those of you at NIH, you can get it at any public library, on Amazon, etc. So let's just start with a question, and I will use the chat, not the Q&A. Just go ahead and fill in this sentence. I am not good at. Carol Dweck is D-W-E-C-K. I'm not good at finishing. I'm not good at communicating, writing, asking for help, networking, conflict management, physics, formal writing, math. I would say the same, writing, productivity, getting started, organizing, public speaking, taking action, confrontation, time management, saying no. Look at all of these, advocating for myself, presentations, math, forgiveness, advocating for myself, lots of things. Now, when you say something like, I'm not good at math, or I'm not good at public speaking, or I'm not good at writing, it's like we hit a dead end. Well, what am I going to do? I'm not good at it. A growth mindset is simply embracing the concept that I'm not good at it yet. I'm not good at public speaking yet. I'm not good at sticking to goals yet. I'm not good at time management yet. It is acknowledging that wherever we start, we have the potential to grow and learn. A fixed mindset is, I'm not good at this. Damn, I need to give up. A growth mindset is, I'm not as good as I need to be at this right now or yet, and I'm going to work on it. And if I work on it, I have the potential to grow and learn. So I think that's a nice introduction, but I think we have to break it down more. So I'm going to give you a bunch of hallmarks of a growth mindset. And as you hear these hallmarks, I just want you to be open and curious. Well, how do they land on me? Is it possible for me to, find my growth mindset? So the honest truth is that all of us are a mix of what I like to call come easies and come hards. We're really, some things, we get into the flow of it very easily. Even when it's frustrating, it feels fun, we're learning, we're generally confident. It feels like a come easy to us. But then we all have come hards, right? So if I filled in the blank, I would say I'm not good at math. And I struggled a lot in graduate school. In fact, I had the honor of retaking my qualifying exams based on the quantitative part of the exam, right? So we're all a mix of come easies and come hards. Having a growth mindset means we look at the come hards and we acknowledge that, even if it's a come hard, we can grow and learn. So I might not be, the best mathematician out there, but I'm capable of growth and learning and passing that exam and learning what I need to learn. I'm capable of developing better communication skills. I'm capable of being more organized. I'm capable of learning assertiveness skills. It's the belief that even if it comes hard to us, that we can grow and learn. Another part of a growth mindset is openness to exploring new approaches and ways of tackling a problem when we get stuck. So I like to drive this part for myself with, why would it work this time if it didn't work the last time? And sometimes I have a good answer for that. And so I decide, let me try again the same way. And sometimes I'm like, I don't know. I've tried this a couple times. I get to the same stuck place. Is there a different approach? And is now the time? Sometimes I think that is the question that drives us to using resources. right? Okay, I've tried this on my own and it hasn't worked. So let me find some support. Let me find a class. Let me find a tutor. Let me find a way to gain some resources. And especially if we acknowledge, well, that brings up some issues of fear because it hasn't always worked. Oh, I can sit with this fear because it might help. That's how we put all this material together. So people with a growth mindset say, okay, this hasn't been working. What else might be? What other strategy might be helpful? The third, this goes back to the whole thing of asking for help and using resources. That's what we do to promote learning. So there were so many comments about, but maybe I should try for myself. And how do I know when I should ask? And it's context specific, but I'm going to go back to an old story from American culture. So I'll fill it in for those of you who maybe didn't grow up hearing about Goldilocks. Some people have told me, oh, there's a similar story in my culture as well. I don't know exactly who Goldilocks was, but she went into this house that she found empty, and she lay down on a bed and she said, oh, that bed's too hard. And then she lay down on another bed and said, oh, that bed's too soft. And then she lay down in a third, oh, that's perfect. And there was some porridge, and one was too hot and the other was too cold. And then there was one just right. We don't want to ask for help right away. And we don't want to suffer in silence for so long that we dig a remarkably deep hole. So the Goldilocks rule is, have I tried enough on my own? And the honest truth is, I don't think we know what enough is right at the beginning. That's what support is for. That's what mentors are for. That's what these discussion groups and things like it are for. As we grow and learn, as we work on this material, we start to have a sense of when we need support and when we don't, when we should try on our own and when we should tell someone or ask someone for resources. So the Goldilocks rule, we don't want to run for help always and never sit with frustration and struggle and learning. And we don't want to sit with it for so long that we make a mess. It's somewhere in the middle. One of the reasons we don't reach out for help is if we wait too long, we're totally demoralized. And I'm going to give you a model for that in a moment. Another thing about growth mindset, there are two things that you need to get good at: looking at process and looking at outcome. Outcome is what happened. Process is what you did along the way. So sometimes you submit a paper and it doesn't get accepted. The outcome is disappointing, but the process, you learn to write a paper, you put together great figures, you struggled with parts of the writing and persisted, and it's a nice draft, right? That's the process, what you did along the way. You can be disappointed with the outcome of an experiment, but acknowledge that, well, you designed it well, you had good controls. You can be disappointed with the feedback from a mentor or a preceptor, but the process, I paid attention to what they said last week, I grew, I learned, I did better in these things. Not to say that we ignore outcome and focus only on process, but we don't do enough thinking about process. Process is often the step-by-step learning. So when we look at process, we realize we're growing. And when we face a lot of setback and disappointment, we have to balance it by I'm growing and learning. Sometimes the most painful of experiences, what we extract from it is learning for the next time. And that helps with our resilience. Another hallmark of a growth mindset, we learn from mistakes, ours and others. I'm going to talk about ours for a minute. Let's be honest. When we make a mistake, it drives embarrassment, frustration, shame, and we can't learn from it. So I like to have in my back pocket for myself this strategy, which I call if then. And I have modified it a little bit in this case for if then then. But if then means if I'm in a meeting and somebody is saying something that really alarms me, then I'm going to take a deep breath. and center myself before responding, because I can respond very quickly and in a pretty aggressive way. So if this happens, then I'm going to. In this case, what I want you to do is, if I get caught in frustration, embarrassment, or shame about my mistake, because we all do, then I'm going to, and you need something that helps you let go of the bad feelings. It could be a song. It could be a mantra that you tell yourself. It could be a picture. I have a little stone that I carry in my pocket a lot that my wife gave me, and somehow holding on to it for a moment centers me. So if I make a mistake and I feel embarrassment or I feel shame, then I'm going to, then I'll regroup so I can learn from it. So I think that that lets us learn from our mistakes. Mantras and imagery can help a lot, because let's be honest, we work in incredibly hard, intense fields. We all make mistakes, right? There's no such thing as perfect. And then finally, if we want to develop our growth mindset, we have to develop our ability to hear feedback. And we call that feedback resilience. And we are going to talk about that in the 4th unit. When we develop our own growth mindset, we can help others as well. This is something to think about if you mentor others within your research group, within school, within study groups, within your peer group, right? When people get really hard on themselves, oh, I'm not good at that, you can simply remind them to put the word yet at the end. You can ask them, well, what resources are out there? You can ask them, was there any learning, right? So we all can develop our growth mindset. We are generally a mix of fixed and growth mindset, just like we're a mix of jackal, giraffe, and ostrich. We're a mix of growth mindset and fixed mindset. We move between the two of them, and our goal is to cultivate and maintain, as much as possible, not always, but as much as possible, a growth mindset in areas that really matter to us. The honest truth is, sometimes we just say, that's not a strength of mine, and it's not a barrier to where I want to lead, and I'm good enough at it, and I'm going to let it go. Sometimes we really need to persist. It matters a lot to what we want to do, and so we want to do our best to find our growth mindset. A big part of finding our growth mindset is questioning our beliefs around seeking help, using resources, and receiving feedback. And we've talked a lot about that already today, and I hope we address that a lot in the groups next week. We should embrace the concept of lifelong learner, and somehow the culture we're in, even though it should drive this, it should drive us to be willing to ask questions and make mistakes and embrace lifelong learning. But somehow it's also very judgmental, and there are so many should messages sent. And so we negate that lifelong learner message. So that's number 1, 2, that was number 5. If we want to be resilient, we have to develop our stress management or wellness practice. And so we're back at behavior now. And I'm going to start by saying, to do well, we have to be well. And I want you to say that often during the week. People tell me, oh, I feel guilty if I take time to run or sing or dance or do my hobby or, talk to my family, play with the cat, whatever. I feel guilty. I should be working. Whenever you feel that guilt coming in, tell yourself, to do well, we have to be well. We cannot be our creative problem-solving self when we are exhausted, when we haven't slept, when we're hangry. So to do well, we have to be well. And I love this model put out there by Dr. Dan Siegel. I love it because I want you to imagine a window that you can open wide, okay? Or a window that can slam shut. Dan Siegel tells us that we all have this zone of tolerance or window of tolerance, and that's where our nervous system is driving us to function effectively. It allows us to respond productively to stress. It's where we find our creative problem-solving self. It's where we can go up to someone and address an interpersonal issue calmly and respectfully. I'd like to talk about these microaggressions, or I'd like to talk about my disappointment about this or that, or I'd like to tell you how stressed I am about this. It's where we can go up and speak calmly about what we need. It's also the zone where we can acknowledge mistakes and go to people and say, can we work this out? It's where our nervous system is excited, but not too excited. If our nervous system is firing on all cylinders, right, in this really hyper-excited way, we can hit this reactive zone where we're just reactive. We're like a jackal in that zone. On the other hand, maybe we have faced a bunch of setback lately. Things haven't gone well. We haven't used any of our wellness strategies. We're in this point where we sort of want to pull the covers up over our head and hide. That's the depleted zone, right? We become an ostrich. We don't reach out for help. We don't use resources. We don't even let anybody know what's happening. So they fill in their own story. Our goal is to take care of ourselves and develop resilience skills so that we can stretch our window of tolerance. Another goal is when we realize that it's closing, that we double down on our well-being behaviors, that we go and remind ourselves of the first principle: to do well, I have to be well. Our window of tolerance opens and closes. But the more we practice pro-resilience behaviors, the easier it is to open it and the wider it opens. You know, I think all of us have had ups and downs. That's an understatement. Some of you have faced incredible struggles and trials and traumas during the pandemic. And on top of the pandemic is climate change disasters and racial injustice and a fraught political climate and setbacks at work. Like, we are all in the middle of this like barrage of difficult behavior, of difficult experiences. And the more wellness behaviors that we develop, the better able we are to tolerate all of that, to move forward. It is very, very hard to stay a long time in the depleted zone or in the reactive zone. But some of us end up there for a long time. So sometimes we get the message, well, I can be pretty depleted and I can still go on and do good work. See, I'm feeling depleted and I still got this project done, but it doesn't usually last. And in the reactive zone, you know, if we're really reactive, we are not putting our best energy to solving problems, right? There's fast thinking, right? That's like an immediate response that's reactive. And then there's slower thinking, right? That's much more reasoned, better able to make good decisions. So the window of tolerance. Now, the first thing to ask yourself is, what does your reactive zone feel like and look like? And what are your early warning signs? And then what does your depleted zone feel like and look like? And what are your early warning signs? We all have a different phenotype for this. There's overlap, but we all are a little different, right? I know the minute I come home from work and my wife says, how are you? And I say, fine. We eat with my in-laws most nights when I get over there. And they say, how was your day? And they have this really nice, open, curious place. And I'm like, it's fine, whatever, right? That's a sign for me that I'm out of my window of tolerance, right? That's a language sign. Some people have sleep signs, or I'm not hungry signs, or I start to be really irritable with people I love signs. We all have different signs. So that's the first step. The second step is, what are the wellness behaviors that help me open my window? And that's what we're going to talk about next. I don't really like the word wellness. I know that it feeds into some cultural things. and that the word wellness has a different meaning for everybody. So I think the language of well-being is really better language. If neither of those words resonate for you, just think of it as stress management, okay? Well-being is a foundation of resilience. And the model that we're going to work with in the course is this 4-quadrant model. There are many other models of well-being out there. We've condensed it down to these 4. You might notice something missing in this, but hopefully it's a good place for us to start our discussion. The things we do and don't do to take care of our body, our mind, our heart, and our spirit. And I just want you to sort of sit back and let this roll over you. If I say the prompt and you think, oh, I never do that, you might rate yourself a 1 or a 2. If you feel like, oh yeah, I generally have that down, maybe 4 or 5. Oh, I sometimes do well, sometimes not so well, 3. I want to stress self-compassion, right? We want to be curious and open and appreciate this isn't always easy, which is why I say I do my best to. All right. There's no perfection here. I do my best to get enough sleep, to eat balanced, nutritious meals, to avoid excessive use of caffeine, to avoid excessive use of alcohol and other drugs of abuse, to get regular exercise, to get regular health care, to take care of myself when I am sick, need rest, or just need a break. And just sit with that for a moment. That's the wellness assessment around physical health. Now let's talk about mental health. I do my best to avoid getting caught up in perfectionism. I do my best to focus on the present versus rehashing the past or worrying about the future. I do my best to avoid negative or deceptive self-talk. The flip side, I do my best to practice self-affirmations and realistic positive self-talk. Some of those mantras, ways that we focus on our growth mindset, the positives that are happening. I avoid judging myself compared to others. So let's be honest, we are hardwired to compare and judge. It's sort of built into our DNA. But some of us judge ourselves compared to others so much that it really gets in the way of enjoying our journey or our victories, right? And we use it to put ourselves down. I do my best to allow myself time to explore and learn new things. And a really important one, I am open to counseling as a tool to maintain and improve my health and well-being. There is so much stigma in our families and in our communities and in the research community. There is so much stigma around mental health issues, around the perception of being weak. We have so much baggage around all of this, right? But we are really in tough times. We do very hard jobs. And if we want to be at the forefront, growing and learning, I think it is extremely important that we embrace that mental health is as important as physical health, and that we should be as proud of taking care of our mental health as we are proud of taking care of our physical health. I want to look now at the wellness assessment around emotional health or heart health. And I don't mean this organ beating, I mean our emotional health. I do my best to be open to and let myself feel all of my emotions, to reach out to others for support when I need it, to communicate my needs and feelings directly and honestly, to make time to spend with my friends and family. Notice the quotes, can be our family of origin, a family of choice. Many of us have many families. I allow myself time to engage in activities that are fun and relaxing. And I like to modify that slightly without constantly thinking I shouldn't be doing it. Do I just embrace that bike ride or that tennis game or that game of hearts with my family? I do my best to avoid extreme use of my phone as a coping tool or avoidance strategy. You know, these things are amazing and they can do incredible things for us, but sometimes we hide behind them. And then I've already talked a little bit about self-compassion. Here's a prompt to remind you to think about that. I do my best to demonstrate compassion for myself and for others. So go ahead and sit for a moment. How am I doing with that one? Now, the fourth quadrant of our assessment is spiritual health. And let me just stress that for some, spiritual health is found in the mosque, the church, the synagogue. For others, it's found in nature. I think for me, spiritual health is found in the kitchen, surrounded by the chaos of 3 dishes, all partly made. We all have different ways of feeling connected to something bigger than us. So spiritual health can be from organized, structured religion or not. So think about it this way. What do I do to nurture me spiritually? Do I seek out practices, activities, people, and places that nurture me spiritually? Do I reflect on and invest in what is meaningful to me? Do I read writings and watch media that inspire me? Do I think of and care about the lives of others who are different than me? And here's my favorite of this entire assessment. Do I allow myself time to just be? Am I a human being or am I always a human doing? Right? Can I just sit and enjoy the sunrise, the sunset, some time with family, listening to music, or do I constantly have to be doing something? And overall, you can ask yourself, am I engaging in activities that support my life's purpose? Now, we're all really busy, and sometimes we don't have a lot of time for those activities. But all of us, to feel good and to be resilient, need to give ourselves some space for connection in this big way. So just a moment for self-reflection. How did that assessment make you feel? What do you feel uncomfortable about? What do you feel curious about? What do you feel satisfied about? Just a moment of self-reflection. And remember that self-compassion piece. You know, we all struggle with this and we can't change everything overnight. So maybe a moment of realistic goal setting. What really poked at you that you'd like to learn about? Or what did you realize you've let go of that you want to get back? I realized that I have been struggling some with some of these bullets. Some of them I'm doing better with. Some of them I have a lot of growth. I also think around all of this that we live in a culture that doesn't value well-being very much. You all get messages of how hard you need to work. And if you don't work hard, right, you're not a very good scientist. I'm embarrassed to be a part of a community that sends that message, but I am honest and say we send it way too often. So I'd like you to ask yourself, first, what am I doing to take care of myself? But also, what are you doing or what could I do to help build a culture of well-being for the people around me, for me and the people around me? And one of the things about participating in this course is the data show us that people really make improvement over time, but they have to come. And there's so much pressure not to come, right? So even your act today of being here is an act of culture change that you should be proud of. Every time you set boundaries and you do a good job of taking care of yourself and others, it's an act of culture change. And leadership comes from all levels of a group or organization. And so I really, really thank you all for being here. There are a ton of elephants in the room by the time we hit this point. If you can believe it, I took this picture. This is maybe the picture that scared me the most that I've ever taken. We were actually underground and very safe, but it was so noisy and loud, and the smells were so strong. It was like such a visceral response to watch all of these elephants so up close. And there are a bunch of elephants in the room about all of this. Right? We're all shaped by the culture that we're in now, the cultures that we have been in, and the culture of science drives a lot of stigma and shame around needing help, taking time off to take care of yourself. It drives stigma and shame around supporting mental health, even about things that are hard for us, right? All the you should know this, you should be able to write an abstract, all of those comments, right, drive shame, right? And those messages really make it hard to embrace a culture of wellness. And right around now, always people say, I wish mentors were here. And I'll tell you that we offer a course called Raising a Resilient Scientist, and it was inspiring to do. Hundreds of PIs came. There was a lot of honest discussion about desires for culture change, wanting to learn how to be a better mentor, wanting to learn about building more inclusive groups. Culture change is slow and it can be very frustrating, but there are many out there who want to see this. And I see already in the chat, people are making comments about, I wish our PIs heard this. One PI recently told me that as they were listening to a resilience talk for trainees, they just imagined that they were a trainee suddenly hearing the material, that they wanted to start at the first principle of learning to take care of themselves better. So this is an act of culture change. And we need culture change. Look at these headlines. This is not the community that we want. Racism and disparities in the biomedical sciences, burnout and mental health problems. Researchers face shocking levels of stress. This is not the community we want to be. And I say this not because all of you caused this. My generation caused this. Leadership allowed this. And now we all have to work hard to change it. And I think that it can be very, very hard to do that. But it does start with small steps to build your own resilience, your own well-being, to talk about it. When I say to NIH leadership, this many people showed up and stuck with it and learned and wants to grow and change science, it sends a message. So we really need to work together to change the wellness culture or the anti-wellness culture we feel surrounded by. We can support each other by being accountability buddies. I have so many people who support me in my wellness practice, people who ask me how I'm doing, what's happening at the gym. Did I play tennis lately? Did I bike today? Uli sometimes she'll bike in, and even just seeing that makes me remember, oh, I can bike in. Another way that you can help be a wellness ambassador and an ambassador for culture change is sticking with it and joining us to talk about the material in the small groups. I don't think these sessions are what changes people. I actually think it's the small groups. And yes, there will be another Raising a Resilient Scientist series. It's coming up soon. I think we start at the end of October. So one last resilience thing, and then we're going to wrap up, and I'm going to take some questions. And that is that we need to do things that bring meaning and happiness to our day, our week, our month. It is full with enough unhappiness and work and chores and irritations. So we have to actively inject meaning and happiness. So I'm just going to ask you to spend a little bit of time over the next few days thinking about what brings you meaning and happiness. And then I'm going to ask you to make what I like to call a wellness collage. And I have done this lecture so many times, and no group has ever met my challenge. So I'll give you a challenge in a slide or two, and you're going to be the group. A wellness collage is a reminder of who we are and what helps us stay well, what brings us joy, what we're grateful for, because it often includes others in the collage, the power of community, and because often the pictures involve us engaged in doing for others, also receiving from others. I think it's just this amazing reminder of how we can be resilient. So this is what it is. This just is a PowerPoint slide. This is a whole bunch of pictures of what keeps me well. So this is my wife and our son. And, I debated taking this picture out because he moved away and we don't get to see him very often. If any of you are in LA, that's where Wonder is. I left it in because I wanted to make a point specifically that sometimes our circumstance really changes things. We don't see him as much. And, the time difference, and he's doesn't love talking on the phone. And, sometimes he calls in the middle of the day and he's super chatty, but I have a meeting. Sometimes circumstance makes it hard for us to connect with some of our big, important resilience strategies. And so we have to find more creative ways. And I think that's been really true during the pandemic. So here's one part, my family. I told you how much cooking is important to me, biking and tennis and all kinds of other physical activities, friends and travel. Art. This is me pre-pandemic at an art museum in Miami. Nature. Here's Teo. All kinds of nature, right? And the science of being out in nature is pretty staggering. And then for me, for some reason, being around kids. Again, something that had to change during the pandemic because we haven't done take your child to work day and I haven't gotten to do this. But in my neighborhood, I'm more thoughtful about stopping and chatting with kids. Today, someone wanted to pet Teo and I was in a rush, but I thought, I need this too. She needs this, but I need this. We can really tap into what keeps us well when we remind ourselves. So the challenge is that you post anything. It doesn't need to be a full collage. It could be one post about something that keeps you well on Twitter and tag me. Or if you're not on Twitter or you don't want to put it onto Twitter, just email it to me. And if I get 100 or more, I will donate 5 cents for each one I get. I decided to donate to World Central Kitchen. I have done this a lot of times and I've never reached the 100. So there's a bunch of you watching. Spread the word and let's go ahead and make a donation all together. So I want to wrap up and go to behaviors. All right. There are 4 really powerful pro-resilience behaviors I want to teach you about or talk to you about. The first is journaling. Journaling lets us be with our thoughts and feelings without worrying what others think about us. It helps us see patterns and growth over time. And I'm going to give you journaling prompts. They're going to come up in every webinar. The second is mindfulness. For some, that extends to learning meditation. For others, it's different elements of mindfulness. The concept around mindfulness is learning to be with our thoughts and our feelings, our struggles, our imperfections, without judging them. It teaches us to be curious. Why am I feeling so afraid today? What parts of that fear are reasonable? What parts might be exaggerated? What can I do about it? It's this idea of being with what's happening. We will give you some opportunity to experience some guided meditations. There are many resources online. Community is the third pro-resilience behavior I want to leave you with. We learn from others, but we also build resilience by helping others. And the Becoming a Resilient Scientist groups are a really important part of the program. And while I acknowledge the very complicated issues in this country around insurance and accessing mental health support, and I acknowledge that it can be even harder now that we are in such a difficult time, I just cannot stress enough the importance of reaching out to mental health experts and engaging in therapy when you are really struggling. Everyone has the right to feel as healthy and good as possible. And there are lots of mental health struggles, just like there are a lot of physical health struggles, and you should have support. And it's really irritating to me that stigma keeps some people away from getting support. So I'm going to leave you with some journaling prompts. Use whatever structure and format works for you. There's science that says it's much better if you write it out, but if you want to do it on your phone or on your laptop, that's fine. If writing is a challenge and you want to turn on a tape and journal verbally, go for it. Start with the prompts here. You don't have to journal every day to see benefits, so start small and be realistic. And if you want to build a habit and you get stuck occasionally, first of all, you can go back to my prompts. I'm going to give you lots of prompts. Try moving to a different place. When I am feeling particularly like my window of tolerance has slammed shut, I will start with a journal prompt. I feel stuck right now because, and usually that unstucks me. So another standard prompt I tell people to use, something that went well today, is we have to train our brain to see the positive, right? So when we start with something that went well today, we're doing that. There's an activity, 3 good things, where you list 3 good things that happened to you and journal about them a little bit. So lots of ideas. But here are some prompts. Each of these prompts is tied to a resilience competency that we talked about. You can start with whatever one pokes you, whatever one excites you, whatever one feels like the most helpful. This is about thinking about the past. This is about your support network. Who can you turn to in difficult times? This is to give you a sense of thinking about resources. This is about seeking help. This is about growth mindset. This is about stress management practices. And then I wanted to end with one, thinking about yourself as an emerging leader, whether that is that you mentor youth in your community, you have students that work with you in your research group, you are ready to make the step to being a leader in a research group, in industry, academia, whatever. I just wanted to give you one sort of future-looking journaling prompt. So come to the groups next week. They really matter. And I will just say up front, yes, they are awkward at the start. You know, a lot of things in life that are helpful are awkward. When I think about new friendships, they always have an awkward phase. And I hope that this is the beginning of forming friendships and support. If you have groups on your campus, go there. If that day doesn't work out, you are welcome to our groups. Remember that asking for help is nearly always hard and nearly always a part of the solution. And so let's really spend the week focused on a little bit around being aware of how you reach out, when you reach out, the stories you tell yourself about reaching out. Go ahead and try on some of these behaviors. And thank you for coming. I truly believe that this generation, I have met so many of you through the pandemic, even though it's virtual, I feel like I have met so many of you. You will be the generation that changes science, healthcare, and the world for the better, right? When I look at the problems facing us and I look at who's working to change it, it's all of the youth and the young adults and the middle adults moving into leadership positions. It's all of you. So thank you. I always like to hear your feedback. Please feel free to click on this link right now. We have time, and I'm going to dive in and take some of the questions in the Q&A. What is your advice on picking your battles? My advice is that the ability to pause and really think through the risk and rewards of entering into that discussion, or I'll use your language, that battle. And I'm going to show you something called a risk reward scaffold. The benefit of me doing this is, the risk of me doing this is, the benefit of me not doing this is, the risk of me not doing it is. My advice on picking our battles is to be really intentional and thoughtful about how important is it to us in the long term. Sometimes it's important in the moment, but not at all in the long term. It's about deciding how safe we are. It's about deciding how important the relationship is. And so it's really having a whole structure around addressing conflict and difficult conversations. And hopefully by the end of the course, we will have developed a whole lot of that. How do you stop comparing your work to others? I've heard this advice that you should only compare your current progress to your past progress. It seems like a great idea, but I find it challenging. I would agree that it's very, very challenging. We're hardwired to compare ourselves. In fact, the other day, I was talking with somebody and I said, I actually think I'm pretty jealous right here. The problem is jealousy right now. And I was really struck by that. I had actually not, although I've complained about this issue many times, I've never really tapped into the fact of how jealous I felt. It's such a natural human emotion to compare ourselves. So I think it's a couple things. First, we accept that we compare, right? And we sit with that. We're not hard on ourselves. Second, we focus on whether that comparison is helpful in the moment or hurtful. Sometimes comparing a small degree can be helpful, right? Maybe we're going to go to somebody and say, you just seem to be having really, doing well in this course. What are some of your strategies? Sometimes it drives us to ask, well, are we doing something holding us back? So I think that we ask ourselves we start with accepting it, and B, we start by saying, so why am I caught here right now? And what am I getting out of it? Right? Why do I keep doing it even if it makes me feel miserable? Right? Or why do I keep doing it? Oh, it's helping in a little bit of a way. And so there's that. And there's just this piece of being curious about it. What can I get out of this? How's it holding me back? And so I think that it isn't just saying never do that, because we're going to do it. That's like me saying, don't ever have chocolate at the end of dinner, right? Because I'm going to do it even though I tell myself too much chocolate right now. Like, we're all human. We're going to do it. So how can I soften the negative or unhelpful impact on me? Need to hear this today. I feel like hiding a lot. I feel like all my peers know more, are more than I am at this point. And I want to say that and just pause for a moment and imagine how many people really feel that way. I think so many of us, many, many times feel that way. And here's the thing, in some ways, each and every one of us is this mix of come easies and come hards. And yeah, for some people, some of their come easies really show. Sometimes you focus on them because it's your come hard. We all have different challenges. We come in with identities that make it harder. We have various things happening in our families and lives that make it harder. I think that we need to come back to that piece of, yes, of course, I'm comparing myself, but there are reasons why I'm where I'm at. What can I learn from this? Is it really true that everybody knows more than me? And I think that the more we learn to be the more mindfulness we learn, the more self-compassion we learn, the more we have ways to sit with all those uncomfortable feelings, the easier it is. So I play tennis a lot. I'm not the best of tennis players, but I am certainly a very eager and earnest tennis player. Big week for me last week in watching Serena Williams matches. I was really, I think, touched by watching her grit at the end and throughout, really. And a lot of times when I leave the tennis court, I've left behind some comparison. I've left behind some jackal language, I've left behind these feelings of less than. Sometimes I have to journal them away. Sometimes I have to talk to a therapist and work through them. We just find strategies because human nature is to look at others and be less than. Question here about finding out about the groups. We'll be sending out an email and you'll get an invitation. Is there a preferred timeline for when the collages should be sent? You know, I am not a very structured person. I will take a look next Thursday. We'll remind you at the groups next week. I really want to celebrate the success of getting 100 of them. So I'm going to take as long as it takes. So no timeline. What is your advice on knowing when you should seek help or assistance versus sitting with it yourself and thinking about how to address a challenging situation? So I think that it is, it depends. The answer to that is that whole process of self-knowledge. It's also knowing the context. So if there's a deadline and I sit and try to figure it out myself, I'm adding extreme stress by coming forward toward the end of the deadline. So that's a contextual factor. That means I reach out earlier. It's also a part of how important this is. Can I make a mistake and learn from it? Or do I need to get it right because of what it is? So that's another contextual factor, how important it is. A third contextual factor are the people involved, right? Does my mentor get really stressed when I don't come and tell them what I'm struggling with? Or do they prefer that I come and say, here are the 5 things I tried, but now I need your help? That's another contextual factor. It also depends what the exact topic is. So if I have a lot of knowledge in the area, I should sit and struggle with it a little bit more. When I'm new to an area, I maybe should get some advice earlier on. It's also, how do I ask? So, you know, we can ask for input in a way that shows that we've given it a lot of thought. Or we can just say, I'm really stuck and need help, right? Maybe that doesn't convey a whole lot of thought, but sending an email that says, I've been working on this. I've tried a variety of things. I've watched some tutorials and I've talked with so-and-so, and I still find myself stuck. Would you be available to give me some input? Right? That's a different approach. So that's the things that I would say about that. Are we sharing the recording? We will most certainly share the recording, and you can log on again and watch it. One of the reasons I find it difficult to prioritize well-being is the idea that I need to be a high-impact scientist. That means I need to publish lots of highly cited papers, go to a high-profile graduate school, build a massive network, right? Does one require two? Meaning, if I want to be a high-impact scientist, do I need to publish papers and go to a high-profile? Like, how connected or interrelated are they? So let's be honest. First of all, I think we need to define what we mean by high impact scientist. And I think that sometimes we buy into a myth of what exactly that is. I don't think that doing high impact science is mutually exclusive of well-being. It might mean you know, setting good boundaries, and sometimes you know, the balance of the two isn't perfect. It might mean that we really, you know, when we hit a bump, we're really proactive in developing our skills. It means being really good at hearing critical feedback, but I don't think any of that requires us to never take time away. I just went away for 2 weeks. That was a long vacation for me. I was very stressed about being away, you know, am I going to be available enough? And I came back and I am so much more of a creative problem solving person after, you know, 2 weeks. seeing art and riding bikes and being in another country and realizing how silly it can be when you don't understand what people are saying to you and you get the food that you didn't think you ordered, right? Everything about those 2 weeks away led me to a much better place. Now, you might be at a point in grad school where, or your postdoc or your whatever school where 2 weeks away is a bad idea and it's going to need to be 1 week. But if you take no time ever, you will burn out. The other thing there is talk about, I need to go to a really high profile graduate school. The honest truth is you need to go to a graduate school that gives you the ability to develop all of these skills, because we really need a whole set of skills to be successful in the long term. The problem is the old model is out there, and you look at people who claim that they work all the time, right? And maybe they work more and they've sacrificed in ways you don't want to work, and maybe it's worked out. You don't see the people where it hasn't worked out or how miserable they are. It's just, there's this like myth of hard work, and it's hurting people. The email for the collage, it's just sharon.milgram@nih.gov. And it'll come in the emails. It's on the slides. Struggle is always a growth opportunity. For example, you need to struggle while running to build endurance. How do you know when you're doing too much of that? The honest truth is you're right. If we want to build endurance, we need to run. If we want to build muscle, we need to lift weights. But let's be honest, we overdo it and we end up with overuse injuries, right? I haven't been able to play tennis in 2 weeks because I overdid it and I hurt my wrist. So I think we should actually take that principle that yes, hard work is required to build endurance, build strength, etc. But when we overdo it, we end up injuring ourselves. I think that that's a really helpful analogy. What can I do if I feel that I lost my purpose of life? I feel hard to move on without any motivation. I think that when you really feel lost like that and depleted like that, you want to make sure that you are getting input from experts, both health experts and mental health experts. I don't think any of us want to sit with that total feeling of disconnection and disengagement. If you notice that you are, really struggling to participate in things that you used to love, you want to get expert input as quickly as possible. And that starts with your healthcare providers and also with mental health experts. Is there data we can point to when it comes to writing, teaching, and diversity statements that supports that resilient cultures are more successful? That's a really great point that I should probably learn about a little bit in terms of the teaching that I do. And so I thank you for asking. I'm going to model important behavior, and that is being willing to say, I should know that, and I don't know that. So I wish I knew that. I suspect that there is some really great data about that. I have some amazing staff in the OITE, and I'm sure that some of them will help me in correcting that gap. I do know that there are a lot of data that show the importance of persistence and growth mindset. Much of that comes from earlier, doesn't come out of the science literature. It comes like a lot of Carol Dweck's work is third graders and early education. So I imagine that there are similar studies. What I will tell you is that our data in analyzing this program shows that people who attend, more than half of them improve their stress management. They decrease their feelings of anxiety and presenteeism, or this act of going to work but not really being there, is decreased. Their ability to be assertive is increased. So the interesting thing there is when you say, so do you feel like you're becoming a better scientist? All of that seems to add up to the answer of yes. So our data anecdotally definitely is showing that this kind of training can help. Whether it leads you to submit more papers or write more grants or be more successful in all of that? I don't know. The honest truth is, for me, the endpoints, well, that's important. And I was a scientist for a long time, and I value that. The honest truth is, for me, the endpoints are trainees that feel more empowered, better about themselves, happy with their own career choices, letting go of the cultural messages about better career choices versus less good career choices. So my endpoints aren't so much research output as this feeling of power in the trainee community. So I will correct for all of you a little bit of that gap in the next talk. If you're comfortable, can you give us a few examples of when you were resilient? Sure. So I'm going to go back a little bit. I did not get into graduate school the first time. I did not pass my qualifying exam for the first time. I got into grad school the second time, and I passed my qualifying exam also on the second time. I like to joke that the second time's a charm for me. So I was pretty devastated in both of those. I had a lot of imposter fears as a graduate student. I didn't come from a community where education was talked about a lot, and I struggled with a lot of different things as I moved out of home, and related to all kinds of issues around my family of origin. And so I didn't come to graduate school very prepared, and that really dogged me for a long time. So when I failed, I was literally paralyzed. I didn't know what to do. I was so ashamed and embarrassed, and I didn't even want to tell people that I had to drop out of graduate school, but I also didn't want to take it again. And the thing that changed that was a conversation with another student who told me that it was time to, in many, many ways, short language, step it up and start trying to figure it out. That involved a whole lot of things, including talking to a counselor, looking at some really unhelpful behaviors. I have had many grants not funded. I have had students leave my lab saying that it wasn't working for them. I get disappointing results in papers that I've submitted. Now I run this office, and sometimes I submit a proposal that I think is wonderful, and people think it's terrible, and it doesn't get funded. For me, exercise and cooking and a whole lot of support from people both at work and away from work make a big difference. So there are a few examples. Do you have any extra advice for how to move out of the automatic response of beating oneself up every time a mistake is made? Starts by acknowledging that that's who we are and that we want to change. And it's learning to pause. It's the if, then. If I find myself in a jackal story beating up myself, then I'm going to pause. I'm going to take a deep breath. I'm going to do this or that. I'm going to take a walk. It's really starting with that awareness that you beat yourself up, acknowledging that it isn't helpful. Maybe a small amount of saying, oh, come on, you could do better would be helpful, but beating yourself up, right? All it does is make us feel lousy. So it starts from catching it, being compassionate with yourself, that it's something you learned that must have helped you at some point, and that it's now something you want to unlearn. It's talking about it with experts. It's talking about it with friends. It's journaling about it. It's baby steps of accepting you're not going to change overnight. The beautiful thing about me teaching this material is I wouldn't say that any of this comes naturally. And I believe in teaching this material because I've seen how much it has helped me, how much it has helped students in my group, how much it has helped OITE staff. We'll all decide which part helps and which part isn't as helpful. We'll all put our energy into different parts. But the honest truth is, by coming here, you are engaged in making change for yourself and for others. And for that, you should end this day proud of yourself. So it is time to wrap up. I don't see any more questions. And so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Uli, we have the information in the chat for the links and stuff, right?
Yes, we have everything in the chat, and we'll send it out after the session.
Fabulous. So everyone, have a great week. It is a lovely day here in Washington, D.C. I don't know what the weather is like where you are. I hope that you'll get outside and enjoy the afternoon. Take good care, everyone.